He opened a can of dog food, but only scooped a tiny amount into the dog's bowl. Looking at the pitifully small portion, the dog seemed to be thinking, "Are you serious?" But when he looked up, he realized the man had only licked the dog food stuck to the spoon. Then the man put the entire can back in the fridge. He stared at the few cans of food left inside and swallowed hard from hunger. But in the end, he closed the fridge and forced himself to drink some tap water to fill his stomach. Only then did the dog realize it had misunderstood him. The dog lowered its head in shame. Seeing this, the man gave a helpless smile and pretended like nothing was wrong. He told the dog he had already eaten his fill. Only then did the dog finally start eating. But look closely, even when the man drank water, he only took tiny sips, savoring every drop. He certainly didn't look like someone who had eaten enough. The story takes place in the future. In the year 2024, a rare solar flare had destroyed Earth's entire ozone layer. Under the intense ultraviolet radiation, humanity was nearly wiped out. The protagonist, Finch, had managed to survive by hiding in a basement before the disaster struck. There, he and his dog depended on each other to survive. Finch thought they could spend the rest of their lives in peace, but after repeatedly venturing outside to search for supplies, his health began to deteriorate. So, before he died, Finch wanted to make sure someone would take care of his dog. Using everything he knew, he built a robot from scratch. He then uploaded a massive amount of knowledge about raising dogs into its memory. Once the data transfer was complete, there was only one thing missing. The robot needed a pair of eyes. With time running out, Finch called over his robotic dog. The dog excitedly thought they were about to head out and search for supplies together again, but it never expected Finch to reach for its eyes. Although Finch couldn't bear to do it, he forced himself to shut the dog down. Then he carefully pulled its head over and removed the eyes. The moment Finch let go, he saw a heartbreaking scene. His loyal robotic dog lowered its head as if it had finally completed its mission. Finch fought back his emotions and installed the eyes onto the robot. And just like that, a crude little robot was born in the basement. Finch then programmed the 3 laws of robotics into its brain, but he added one more rule of his own. When the robot began responding to him fluently, Finch was overjoyed. But before he could celebrate for long, the lights suddenly went out. Finch put on his protective suit and climbed onto the roof. He quickly repaired the wind turbine that supplied their electricity. But just as he was about to head back inside, he noticed something terrifying. Beneath a massive wall of dark clouds, lightning was rapidly approaching. Realizing they were in danger, Finch rushed back into the basement. According to the robot's calculations, the superstorm would reach them within 24 hours. Even worse, it was expected to last for at least a month, and they didn't have enough food to survive even 3 days. If they wanted to survive, Finch had only one choice. He decided to head for a place he had always wanted to visit, San Francisco. There was no time to wait for the robot to finish downloading all the data. Finch hurriedly attached its arms and legs and taught it how to walk. Luckily, the robot learned incredibly fast. Soon, the entire family was busy preparing to leave. Even the robotic dog wanted to help, but without its eyes, it could only crash blindly into everything inside the room. Then Finch noticed an unused camera and had an idea. He mounted the camera onto the robotic dog. Once everything was packed, 2 men and 2 dogs, their little family of 4, began their journey. They were driving a well-equipped RV, but Finch knew this trip was anything but a vacation. Not only did he have to watch out for desperate survivors, he also had to teach the robot how to survive in a world that had collapsed. When they reached a small town, Finch decided to teach the robot how to search for supplies. Having only just entered the world, the robot was curious about absolutely everything. It followed Finch around, talking non-stop the entire way. Then it saw its reflection in a mirror and suddenly froze. Finch called its name, but the robot didn't respond. It just stared at its reflection with wide open eyes, as if it had suddenly developed a sense of self. Finch found a bag of corn kernels on a table. He wanted the robot to understand that the world it was seeing was completely different from the data it had been programmed with. First, Finch told the robot to hold a metal pan he had found by the roadside. Then he poured the corn kernels into it. The robot jumped in surprise. For the first time, it directly experienced just how extreme the outside temperature was. But the next second, its playful nature took over. It started stomping its feet, begging Finch to do it again. Seeing this, Finch couldn't help but smile. But that smile disappeared almost instantly. His face suddenly turned pale. The superstorm had caught up with them. Finch jumped into the RV and sped out of town. But the heavy vehicle couldn't outrun the enormous black storm behind them. With their lives on the line, they made a desperate decision. They jumped out of the RV, grabbed long stakes and a winch from the toolbox, and prepared to anchor the vehicle to the ground. They divided the work between them. Before long, they had secured 3 corners. The storm was almost upon them, but Finch suddenly ran out of strength and couldn't drive the final stake into the ground. So he reluctantly listened to the robot and got back inside the RV. The robot stayed outside alone, continuing to reinforce the cables. Even when Finch shouted for it to come back, it refused to stop. It kept working until the very last moment. Just as the storm arrived, the robot finally scrambled back inside. Before they could even react, the RV began shaking violently. Under the force of the raging winds, the first cable snapped, then the second, then the third. With 3 cables gone, the situation became extremely dangerous. The RV was literally being lifted off the ground. Luckily, the final cable held on until the very end. After what felt like endless darkness, the storm finally passed. With a deafening crash, the RV slammed back onto the ground. The disaster was finally over. Finch immediately asked if everyone was okay, but the robot somehow came up with the name Princess Penguin and seriously reported that there were casualties. When Finch got out, he finally understood what had happened. The stake the robot had driven into the ground had actually saved them. Who would have thought this cobbled-together robot would really come through when it mattered most? Then Finch noticed one of the tires had split open. They had a spare tire. But there was one problem. They had forgotten the jack. While Finch was complaining about what they were supposed to do, the robot called him over. And just like that, the robot became the jack. It lifted the RV and helped Finch replace the damaged tire. Finch was in a great mood. He decided it was finally time to give the robot a proper name. The moment the robot heard that, it excitedly started stomping its feet again. That night, the robot kept talking non-stop. It desperately wanted a proper name, but Finch thought there was no need for some complicated human name when there were only the two of them. The robot looked unhappily out the window. After thinking for a while, it suddenly came up with a simple name. From that moment on, he had his own name, Jeff. The next day, they continued their journey, but Finch's health was getting worse and worse. Every now and then, he would cough up blood. Eventually, they stopped at an abandoned restaurant to rest. Finch got out with the dog and told Jeff to stay behind and guard the supplies. As soon as they left, Jeff was furious. He couldn't believe Finch treated him like some useless errand boy. So while his owner was out of sight, Jeff climbed into the driver's seat. He even tried to imitate the way Finch drove. But the moment Finch heard the noise, he rushed back, listening to Jeff's lies. Finch immediately realized something was wrong, but instead of getting angry, he decided to play along. He calmly told Jeff to bring him his protective suit first. Jeff apparently mistook this for encouragement. Instead of bringing the suit, he climbed back into the RV, and right in front of Finch's stunned face, he started the engine again. And sure enough, things went wrong. Finch wasn't upset because of the RV. What truly hurt was knowing his life was coming to an end. While he couldn't even control the thing he had created, he was overwhelmed by a deep sense of helplessness. He forced himself to stay calm and called Jeff over. Then, without any protection, he reached his hand outside. Under the sun's ultraviolet radiation, smoke quickly began rising from his palm. Finch was deliberately hurting himself because he wanted Jeff to grow up faster. He didn't need a friend. He didn't need a family. He had only created Jeff so that someone would take care of the dog after he was gone. Those heartbreaking words left Jeff completely silent. After they got back on the road, Jeff stayed inside the RV and refused to come out. Finch realized he had hurt the robot's feelings. So, hoping to lighten the mood, he decided to let Jeff start learning how to drive. Just moments ago, Jeff had been sulking. Now, he was practically bursting with excitement. He even learned how to honk the horn with his face. The little guy was showing off again. Finch could only shake his head. He had grown to both love and hate this ridiculous little robot. But Finch knew he didn't have much time left. One night, Jeff was standing guard outside. Suddenly, he heard the dog barking inside the RV. When he rushed in, he found Finch vomiting blood again. But this time, it was far worse than before. Finch lay on the bed, barely conscious, and eventually, he passed out completely. Desperate to save his creator, Jeff secretly drove the RV into the city. He and the robotic dog then entered a hospital. Sure enough, there were plenty of medicines inside. Jeff was thrilled. He believed that with this much medicine, he could definitely save Finch, so he began gathering everything he could find. Meanwhile, the robotic dog got incredibly lucky. It discovered a box of cookies, but in a post-apocalyptic world, even a single can of food was priceless. There was no way something as perfect as a box of cookies would just be sitting there. It was a trap. Sure enough, a hidden animal trap suddenly snapped shut. The robotic dog was crushed into pieces. By then, Finch had regained consciousness and come looking for them. He heard the noise coming from inside. When he entered, he was devastated by what he saw. The robotic dog had been completely torn apart. Its parts were scattered all over the floor. Finch was heartbroken. This time, there was no way to put the dog back together, but there was no time to grieve. Finch quickly pulled himself together and found Jeff. He didn't even have time to lecture him. He simply grabbed Jeff and hurried out of there. What they didn't know was that a group of desperate survivors had been watching them. The moment the RV drove away, another vehicle emerged from hiding and followed them. To these desperate people, the man and the dog in that RV were nothing more than several days worth of food. They kept chasing them well into the night. Realizing they couldn't keep running forever, Finch made a desperate move. He drove the RV into an underpass, but the solar panels on the roof were too high. The RV couldn't fit. Jeff jumped out and pushed with all his strength. Somehow, he managed to force the RV underneath. They narrowly escaped their pursuers, but the